Okay, guys, we're now officially recording. Welcome to the second session on To Kill a Mocking Mind, and it has everything to do with boundaries this evening. But for the newbies that are on the group, and for somebody who's watching this video for the first time, if you want to find out more information about To Kill a Mocking Mind, go to the website, which is tokillamockingmind.com, and there you will find a little bit more detail on what we cover. We go through personal growth, leadership development, self-awareness, boundaries, which is the biggest topic we're covering lately, behavior modification, and then health. Tonight's session will be a lot about personal leadership development, self-awareness, definitely boundaries, in fact, everything except health. And if you look at health, it's definitely going to affect your health as well, because once you start setting healthy boundaries, you're going to be able to sleep better, you're going to be able to work better, and your whole body from a stress perspective is going to be so much better. So it actually does cover all of those entities. Why To Kill a Mocking Mind? Because each and every single one of us have that inner narrator, that voices that speak to us, and what the voices do for us is they actually prepare our experiences verbally in our heads. Even so, for example, if you're going to bungee jump, suddenly your voices start telling you a whole lot of things to prevent you from actually jumping off the cliff, which is a natural thing to do, is not to jump off the cliff. And so your voices start speaking, and then those little voices in your head start having a play-by-play of what if this could happen, what if that could happen. None of those things are going to happen, but your mind, and then what happens, your feelings get attached to that, and then your feelings override, and that's where we make decisions with our feelings and not with our logic, because we've listened to too many little voices playing in our head. They describe, explain, and even comment on your situation. So for me, I sometimes have those outcomes of conversations where I've finished a whole conversation with Anthony in the car, and then I think that I've had this conversation with him, because one of those little voices sounds just like him, another little voice sounds like my mother, another little voice sounds like my dad, and so we have these choir of voices in our head. And if we don't know how to filter them, we're going to actually not move forward in life, and we're going to stay in our comfort zone, because we are designed, and our mind is designed to protect you and me and keep us in our comfort zones. So if we listen to those little voices, we will never venture out and go into the big wide world and start breaking out of our comfort zones, because we'll be too scared to. If you look at children, their little voices haven't developed yet, so they just go outside their comfort zones. Okay. So tonight's session is, again, boundaries. Just to recap quickly, the functions of boundaries are to keep the good in and the bad out. So if were a farmer, you'd want to keep the foxes out, so you keep your sheep safe. They set up alarms for us when something is wrong. So your boundary becomes an alarm, like an electric fence, like, those kind of things. If danger's coming your way, if somebody violates that boundary and you've set the boundary, then what helps you is that when somebody violates that boundary, alarms are going to go off within your body. In other words, anxiousness, whatever it might be. They help you to detach, so you don't get personally attached to outcomes, because you know the outcome is the right thing and your emotions don't override. They protect our freedom, because we're able to move freely, and we're able to become the person that we are designed to be by the fact that we can actually work within our freedom. So how do I know I have a boundary problem? Well, my life is out of control. Trying harder is not working. Being nice out of fear is not working. Okay, taking responsibility for others is not working and never should work. Okay. And being taken advantage of, feeling disrespected, you will end up with physical and emotional pain, and also you will feel certain symptoms. So what I'm going to make sure is that everybody who's on the session tonight and who's on the group, you'll get the PowerPoint and you will get the recording, so you can go over both of these again and again and again, and share them with people that you feel might need to listen to a little bit about boundary setting. I know that personally, boundaries was my biggest personal growth, I would say, not strategy, but personal growth time in my life, where I actually became and started taking more control of my life. Instead of being a people pleaser, I then started being the person that God has designed me to be. Okay, I used to be a very big people pleaser. You won't believe it. All right, for those of you who know me. Okay, so now you need your pen and paper, everybody. Now it's very important to have your pens and papers, please. What we're going to do is, yes, Vilma, you want to say something? You got your pen. Okay, good. Now you got your paper. You're not going to write on your hubby's back, okay? Or a shirt or something like that. Okay. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a statement. Okay. And the statement is going to have a alphabet in front of it. So it'll either be a C, an F, or an R. If that pertains to you, then I want you to, you can go 1 to, it's going to be 1 to 23. All right. You do not have to choose all 23. You're only going to choose the statement that is appropriate for you. Okay, so it could be 2 statements out of all 23. It could be no statements out of all 23. And I really pray it's not all 23. All right. If it is, we'll deal with that later. And then all I want you to do is write a 1, and then either it's F, C, or R. Okay, that's all you're going to write down. You don't have to write the whole sentence down. I'll give you time to just choose which one it is, but you have to just go through it, just whatever's your first response. Now, what is important is that when you read the statement, I want you to say, within the last 3 months, I have felt that way. Okay, within the last 3 months. So if it's not just present, but within the last 3 months, because what has happened is, even if you felt one of the statements 3 months ago, you may not have dealt with it yet. You might think you have, but unless you've proactively gone on a journey to actually deal with it, then that's the one. So true, all the no boundary signs. So please, I've moved on from there. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I want to share screen again for you guys. Find my screen. There we go. Okay. Awesome. So true, all the no boundary signs. So pleased I've moved on from there. Okay, well, we're going to see. So remember, it's within the last 3 months.
Do we know what CFR stands for?
No, you don't know what CFR stands for on purpose. Otherwise, you will be influenced on making the statement.
Oh, okay.
All right. So number 1.
So on your mark. I also wanted to ask that, and
Go, Vilma. You want to know?
Lyrics on the go-getters want to know the answers up front. Okay. So the suspense will kill you. I'm so sorry. So have you experienced high blood pressure within the last 3 months? If so, write 1, C. Number 2, losing your temper. Write 2, C. Or else just put a dash there by the 2 or whatever it is, so that you know you've dealt with number 2. Number 3, feeling overwhelmed. Any sense of feeling overwhelmed, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's traveling, or none of us have been traveling, we all feel overwhelmed with traveling at the moment. Any form of feeling overwhelmed, whether it's with your children, taking them to school, anything, okay? Feeling of overwhelmed, F. Right, getting nothing done, R. If you feel that you've just been in that space every now and again where you just can't get things done, it's like, I'm just going to take the day off today and do absolutely nothing. Okay.
Michelle?
Number 5.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay, now just let me get this straight. Number 1, C, if I had high blood pressure. If I didn't have, what do I write?
Then you just leave it blank.
Okay.
Okay, then just put a dash there, because then you're not counting that question. Okay.
Okay.
But so Tessa would be no, she hasn't experienced high blood pressure. Or if yours is now all sorted out, then no, then it's all good. Okay, then you don't have to put anything there, just a dash, a naught, or a whatever. Okay, so the only ones you're going to count are the ones that are appropriate to you right now and within the last 3 months.
Understood.
All right. See if you've experienced any form of headaches, whether you've been on a diet, whether you've been on an eating plan over the last 3 months, whatever it is. If you experience headaches, put a headache.
If it was 1?
If it was 1 headache in the last 3 months, put it down. Okay. Number 6, see if you've had any form of feeling depressed, just like really depressed. Things are not going your way. You've lost your job. You don't know where to find money. There's that oppression that's just been upon you. any form of those feelings. 7, felt fatigued, tired, exhausted. F, put an F there if you have felt any form of tired. Number 8, being unable to concentrate. So the focus is being difficult, just put an F there. And your mind is always wondering, whatever it might be. Number 9, eating too much. Oh, that would be mine. Put C. C, eating too much, overeating. Just not Mother's Day. We don't count Mother's Day. Mother's Day, you just had to eat because it was a celebration. That's not counting eating too much. Okay, developing allergies, any form of allergies, inflammation, allergies, any form of allergies. Put a C. 11, feeling sorry for yourself. Okay, woe is me. It's not fair. I should still be working. I shouldn't still be working. Just generally just like, oh, you know what? Yummy, yumma bowl. Okay, for the Afrikaners, put an R. Number 12, being overweight. Put a C. Okay. Right, number 13, feeling left out. You feel like you've been left, put an R, being left out of situations, being left out of conversations, being left out of whatever it might be, you feel that you've been left out. 14, F, being disorganized. Your desk is disorganized, your house is disorganized, you just feel generally just disorganized. You're not normally disorganized, but you feel disorganized. 15, put F and R if you worry. Now, you could be worrying about your children. You could be worrying about COVID. You could be worrying about where's the next bill going to be paid for. You're going to be worried about where you're going to get money. Are you going to be worried about investing? Whatever it is, any form of worry, put an F and an R. Okay, being envious of someone else, envious of somebody bought a new car, new house, put an R. Somebody who's earning more money than you, somebody who just got promoted and you didn't get promoted, any form of envy. Feeling like a slave, in other words, your freedom is taken away from you. Or you feel like you just feel like a slave. You come home from work, you work all day long. Your boss tells you what to do. You come home, you got to cook, you got to clean. You just generally just think, you know what, I don't exist. I just might as well be a slave. Okay, that's an R. Number 18, you have ulcers, any form of ulcers, mouth ulcers, stomach ulcers, ulcers. Okay, please put a C. 19, abusing alcohol. That would have been me a couple of years ago. In fact, when I started this process, that was definitely a C. Okay, abusing alcohol. Crying spells, please put a C. In other words, you're overwhelmed. You just cry because you just cry, and that's okay, ladies. It's all good. Okay, please put a C. Sorry to generalize on you, ladies. Staying in bed. You really just do not want to get out of bed. You just say, you know what? I am staying in bed. Please put a C. All right. I'm not going to go to work. I'm not going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to stay in bed because I can. All right. 22, procrastination. Please put an F if you find you procrastinate. And number 23, you feel like you have no choices. You can't make choices. You can't make decisions. You're not allowed to. You just feel that doesn't matter what you do at work, at home, with your spouse, whatever it is, you just basically feel I'm stuck in a rut and I have no choices. Okay. Now, please, if you could count how many C's you've got, how many R's you've got, and how many F's you've got. All right, if you could do that. All right. Okay. Good. Okay, so now Vilma, Anthony, who else would like to know what CRF stands for and how that affects you and sits where you are right now? So it's interesting to see. Really want to know? See, Billy wants to definitely know. I know Anton and Wilma want to know. See all our strong choleric people here wanting to know. I know Fernando as well. He definitely wants to know. Okay, cool. Let's go share screen. Okay, let's do this. Okay, there we go. All right. All right, the fruit says something's wrong with the tree. So I don't know if you've realized that, if you've got rot fruit or fruit that's too small, there's something wrong with the actual tree. And if there's something wrong with the actual tree, it's invariably the roots. So the roots, either it's not getting sufficient water, the soil is not nourishing it, or something is wrong if the fruit, and all of these things that we've looked at now are the fruit of the tree. You are the tree. So C is, you will then experience clinical symptoms. So that would mean anything that's, in other words, the meaning of the presence of pain. Clinically, there's something wrong, okay? Which means that you need to now deal with that from a natural medicine remedy or eating that kind of thing. All right, so we'll look at a little bit deeper. R is relational symptoms. That means you're feeling a sense of loss in certain relationships. So now it might not be all relationships, it might be only some relationships. So for those of you that chose the F and the R, that one that's there, you will need to count both the F and the R, because it is either a relational root problem or it's a functional root problem. Functional meaning that you have time and or management pain. So you feel you can't get on time, you're rushing through things, you're running out of time, or you're not able to manage your day productively. Okay, so those are the three things. So you can write those down. C is for clinical, R is for relational, and F is for functional symptoms. This is the fruit on the tree. Now, in these areas, if you had 0 all the way, then your boundaries are 100% in place. If you don't, and you've got some C's, R's, and F's, then you need to look at a little bit more deeper. We're going to go in and say, where am I feeling those symptoms? Okay, so we're going to look a little bit deeper. Anybody want to ask any questions on that before we go any further? Oopsie, stop sharing.
What is the possibility or the viability of anybody having 0? I doubt that.
I doubt that, because
And they're going to be lying.
I agree with you, Vilma. I agree that you're not actually being true to yourself, because if, for example, you moved everything, let's say you have everything sorted out and then you move job, all right? Okay, thanks, Vilma, for sharing. That's a very similar sort of like structure to Anthony's too. Okay, no, just the C is your F's and R's are your differences. But if you change job, you're then going to have relational symptoms. You're going to feel that you've been left out of conversations. You're going to feel insecurities of the past will start coming up. And it's a natural thing. But it's for you to identify, hold on, this is because I pointed out those questions, you would say, because I'm feeling left out, this is a relational issue. So now I need to go and deal with what relation do I feel I'm being left out of? How do I go set a boundary so I don't feel that anymore? Okay. So boundary would be, for example, if I felt left out of a new job, for example, and I felt that I was in the inner circle and I was always left out of certain conversations, I would then have to go and sit there and say, guys, you know, Vilma, and I feel that I'm being left out of some conversations, and should I be in these conversations or shouldn't I be in these conversations? If I am in these conversations, now I set the boundary by saying, these are the circumstances that I expect you to pick up the telephone, because if you don't, the consequence, which we're going to talk about how we set a boundary again, I will always recap how to set boundaries, okay? Because we're going to make sure that ducks can swim currents. We're going to make sure that ducks can swim currents. And if ducks can swim currents, you and I can set boundaries, okay? So ducks can swim currents. Let's have a look at some of these. Well done, guys, for sharing. Now, Shalane, I agree. Fernando, wow, awesome. Thank you. Wow, awesome. Thank you, guys. So it shows you, most definitely, my love. Sylvia, I totally agree with you. 100%. 100%. Awesome. So it shows you, although that we think that in general, we don't have boundary issues, but when we narrow it down to where in specific areas I could have, and that would be perhaps a boundary of not allowing yourself to grieve properly, Sylvia, you know, always falling prey to everybody else. Okay, awesome. Thank you, George, for sharing. Nice one. I thought your clinical would be sorted out because of your blood pressure being sorted out so nicely. Okay, Thank you, guys. So, okay, we've looked at previously in the last session, we looked at what areas I need to make sure that I've got boundaries. I'm not going into all of them. I'm just going to write them, look at them here. So you can take a screenshot at the end if you just want them grouped together. We looked at where I could have my boundaries in my feelings, attitudes and my beliefs, my behaviors, my choices, my values, my limits, my talents, my thoughts, my desires, my love. Those areas are the areas that we need to start processing. Do and have I set a boundary? Do I need to set a boundary? When we now look at the clinical, the functional, or the relational, you're going to have that appearing in all of these areas. So now if you want to actually end up cleansing and becoming a whole person, and as we said, all the time circumstances change. So my clinical is very high at the moment, and that's because of wanting to go on weight loss, trying to sort out blood pressure, trying to sort out all of those things. But it affects things. So tonight we're specifically going to look at how does this affect my feelings. The next couple of weeks we will go through the others as well, because this is a nice framework for us to work, because if my feelings are not intact and I have clinical issues, I am going to probably cry, which leads to functional issues as well, which means I can't go into public. Okay, so how does this affect me, and how does it affect my feelings? So here we go. Remember, your feelings was the barometer of your soul. It tells us how we're doing. Hey, how am I doing? All right. And we've got to ask ourselves the question, do I ignore my feelings, or do I let my feelings dictate to me? Or do I process my feeling, which means that I have the feeling, I know what that feeling means, I know what trigger it's linked to, and I know what is my next step to move forward. Most of us do not function from that place. We either function with, you know what, I'll just ignore this and move on, okay? Or I let them dictate to me. So one of mine, for example, that I'm dealing with right now is that my daughter, who lives very close to me, just left a WhatsApp message for me for Mother's Day. She didn't personally pick up the phone. She didn't. Now I can go down the rabbit hole with this one, okay? And if I had to go down the old rabbit hole, I would have said, oh, she's leaving me out. She doesn't care about me. She doesn't love me. But because I've said, hold on a second, why do I feel the way I feel? Is this relational? Yes, it is. My clinical is not going to function in which I'm not going to cry about this, so it's relational. Is it my responsibility to fix this with her, or is it her responsibility to work through what she's working through? And so I've decided, you know what, it's her responsibility to work through what she's working through. If I go and approach her now, perhaps I could upset the apple cart, and maybe she's not ready to talk about whatever her conversation is. Or maybe it's absolutely nothing. So I just made a decision. I bounced it off my Pilates partners, and my Pilates instructor said, hey, this is it. And we kind of like processed it and was like, okay, I'm thinking along the right track. You know what? She must own her feelings. I'm going to own my feelings. I'm going to put a boundary up. My boundary is I'm not going to allow it to hurt me. I'm not going to allow it to affect me. But when I see her, I'm still going to be open and loving towards her, because I have the freedom to make that choice. Do you see why boundaries are so important?
Sure.
What?
You know,
Don't you think she might have just forgotten?
She sent a WhatsApp, and she's a mother.
Yeah.
And she's a mother, so
That's
she
also,
celebrated Mother's Day. Okay, but I could have gone down the wrong rabbit hole with this. You were going to say?
I'm just thinking this through, that your stress situation really will determine a lot how you respond, or either react or respond to this. I can tell you now that 3 years ago,
Woo!
they would have been hell to play in the front window, because she doesn't love me, she's ignoring me. And yet what I hear tonight in terms of you taking control of the situation, of saying, you know what, it's for her to own it. Wow, that shows growth in my mind, I'll be honest.
Thank you. So she's responsible for her own feelings. I'm responsible for my feelings, and I'm not going to go and make an issue out of it. If she chooses to come and speak to me about it, I'm going to be able to be in a place to speak to her, not from an angry or an upset position. Okay, I won't have to go and take my bar or
Just
my,
becomes worse.
yeah, exactly. It will just become hers, because I know my
Yeah.
precious daughter very well. Okay, she is a triple flower block, so it's like two bulls in a china shop. All right, okay, so let's process this deeper. So clinical symptoms says I have pain. All right, so if I have pain, we need to ask ourselves and look at it from this perception. So we're just looking at clinical and my feelings attached to clinical. So those of you that had clinical could fall into one of these 4 categories, and that could be depression. All right. So as depression as an affected state is made up primarily of feelings of loss. So Sylvia, I'm sorry to bring up, you mentioned the dogs. You should be suffering a state of depression because you have to go through the depression curve if you've suffered loss. You have to. So maybe what I'll do is, if I remember, or just remind me on the group to actually post the depression curve that you've got to go through, because until you go all the way through the depression curve, you're going to stay stuck. Okay, and no one can get you out of that state except for yourself. So your feelings of loss are going to be overwhelming. Okay, so that's attached to from a clinical perspective, any form of loss, a loss of a child, a loss of a job, a loss of a dog, a loss of a friendship, anything that you've lost. Even if you, let's say, for example, had an heirloom in your house and you really treasured that heirloom, then what will happen is if someone had to break that heirloom, you're going to suffer a loss because there's an emotional attachment to that thing. Mother's Day, this Mother's Day now, if you have no mom, you will suffer a state of depression, a feeling of loss. Okay. We begin to feel like slaves because we are in somebody else's control and we resent the domination in our lives. That would be resentment. So if someone's always telling you what to do, you can't make decisions for yourself. You feel like they're always controlling. In other words, if you had to make steak for dinner, but they were driving in the car and felt like chicken, all hell breaks loose because you made steak. Like, it's probably the other way around, but all hell will break loose. And the person overreacts. And now you think, gosh, now I must go make chicken, put the steak in the fridge, because you've got to now please that situation. But while you're doing it, there's this resentment turmoil that starts happening inside of you. So at any point in time, so I know if I go into a workplace situation and even though I've chosen, even if I do a contract job and somebody starts speaking to me, even though they're paying me to do the work, but they speak to me in this, I am the boss, you are a mere employee. Whoa, resentment comes in me. I'd rather cancel the job and give it back to them and walk away, because clinically I can't deal with it. It's something, and I know it's my trigger, and I know I've got to deal with it. So for me, the moment that's my big nemesis for me. I battle a lot with that, and it kicks up and rears its head within seconds in me. Okay, all right. The fourth one is anger.
Third one.
Sorry, my apologies. The third one is anger. Anger is a sign of feeling that I'm out of control inside us. Now, anger is very easy to process. Anger is not bad. Anger is actually very good. What we do with anger is bad. So anger is very good because anger is going to come from either fear, frustration, or hurt. So the moment you feel anger welling up within inside you, it's so easy to process. Just ask yourself the 3 questions. Has someone hurt me emotionally or hurt me physically? If the answer is yes, process your anger. Am I feeling frustrated? Where am I feeling, and who or what is frustrating me? Deal with that. Anger will subside. Fear, frustration. What's fear? Do I feel fearful? Because when you're in a fearful situation, the anger will rub out, and it's a defense mechanism for you. Then deal with the anger before you actually vent that anger out. Okay, so it's or suppress it. Either suppressing your anger or venting your anger are dangerous. Dealing with your anger is the most important thing. And that is important. Yeah.
I can't help feeling that if you actually suppress your anger, it will lead to resentment.
100%.
Because you're actually swallowing that anger, you're not dealing with the reality of it, and resentment may kick in. That's what I think.
Definitely. This is suppressing, the pushing it under the carpet all the time, you know. Eventually, you're going to wonder why you've got a limp, and it's because you're going to keep walking over that carpet that you've pushed all this stuff underneath it and never dealt with. All right. But like we spoke about last week, we cannot deal with these in your anger. Okay. So the Bible says, do not sin. I'm going to ask the pastor.
Do not sin in your anger.
Do not sin in your anger, which means don't vent it out. It also says, do not go to sleep. Do not let the sun go down.
Don't let the sun go down on your
anger.
On your anger. Okay.
So you have to declare that you're angry.
So it does not say, do not let the sun go down until you've resolved the conflict. It does not say that. It says, do not let the sun go down in your anger, which means that it's your responsibility to process your anger, come to peace within yourself before you go to sleep. When you find the peace, you then set up an appointment with the other person to deal with the conflict. Okay. It doesn't say sit until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, going round and round in circles, trying to resolve something. It does not say that. Okay. So it is our responsibility to deal with and to process anger. Okay. The fourth one now is to do with our obsessive compulsive behaviors. We can develop ritualistic, compulsive sort of ways of trying to gain a sense of control. So we control dirt, germs, overeating, undereating, all those kind of things. So if you find that you are obsessive compulsive, try and trigger what are the things that trigger those things off. Okay. So always cleaning house, or Anthony's chuckling. Let me find out what he's chuckling at. Share with us.
Well, I now know why I go and wash dishes. When I feel out of control, I go and wash the dishes.
He does.
Clean the dishes. That's it.
His obsessive.
They don't back chat nothing.
You can clean them. So yeah, so I guess
I like that obsession.
Me, don't worry, I do too, Will, but I've never had to have a dishwasher. I just got to quickly make his life out of control and choop, they're all done. That's actually called manipulation there, in case somebody was wondering.
I hear.
Right.
So you make him angry at the right time so that your dishes get washed.
Can get washed.
I can feel you. I can feel you.
So every Friday night, it's like, oh, I'm going to upset him quickly. No, jokes aside. All right, so that's clinical. All right, so I hope you've learned something from that. Did anybody learn something that was worthwhile? They managed to identify something, those especially who had C that were pretty high. Yes, Wilma.
Yeah, I just want to say that sort of having sort of gone around the block a number of times, I've sort of taught myself to almost grade things and say, I feel myself starting to get angry, and I try and stop myself and evaluate and ask myself the question, is this worth my anger? And 9 out of 10 times, the answer to that is no.
Yeah. Awesome.
And don't take on, because you get angry at something, the other person might not even realize you're angry at them.
100%.
So now you are steaming up in a the smoke is coming out of your ears, and the other person is just merrily going ahead. It's only hurting yourself.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the ways that I've sort of, I try and channel.
So Anthony's favorite, especially if I'm angry, is he calls me Shelly. Shell, listen, in 2 to 5 years from now, is this really going to matter? And I'm going like, yes, it's going to matter to me right now. I'm like so angry now. I don't care about it. I don't care about 2 to 5 years now. I'm worried about it now. So but he processes it the same way. Awesome, Sonia. Thanks for sharing that. You also got something out of it as well. Sylvia, Shalane, great. Okay, awesome.
Can I just add?
Barney, great.
something I've just realized now is I looked at
Oh,
depression.
me too, Fani. Carry on.
I looked at depression, resentment, anger, and compulsive. Said which one of those trips me up? Because obviously my clinical score was the highest. I'll be honest. I'm not perfect, by the way. And I realized it was resentment because I have an immense way of controlling my emotions. But the truth is, although I'm controlling them, I actually am resentful.
Yeah.
And then I asked myself why, and I realized it's because it what's the word? It violates my value of injustice. Because it's an injustice to me, that's why I become resentful. So I was able to now to close the loop because you want to find out why. So I asked, why do I become resentful? And the truth is, I don't always deal with it because that means I've got the lack of the boundary to deal with it.
Correct. So it's now, but now you know.
Correct.
So the moment now, but now you're triggering it to the value of injustice. So the moment you are injustice, now you can say, what is the injustice in this situation?
True.
And now how do I put a boundary that doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because
and that's easier to deal with.
True. Because look, I've got a good heart. So people abuse that because of my good heart. But it is an injustice of who I am, what I should stand for, and what I do want to stand for. So that was a big aha for me is when I was why I become resentful, I just realized it was my value of injustice. So guys, I want to encourage all of you. You can see it is what it is. You can look at me and go like, oh my gosh, he's admitting he's got resentment. No, the reality is I am voicing it, I'm getting it out. And that is my growth. So I want to invite anybody here. If you feel you need to voice it, voice it. Yeah. We are here to grow together.
Awesome. And Fani, I totally agree with you. People who repeat silly mistakes, that puts my level of frustration and like it tips the scale on me as well. So we're both the same there. And Fani, Fernando, thanks for sharing, battling with your situation currently. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. Super.
I'm very glad, Anthony, that you the way you brought it back to your values, because a lot of my anger, when I do get angry, does work itself back to loyalty, and loyalty and integrity is my second one.
Yeah,
that makes me that does make me angry.
Well, so, in a couple of weeks' time, we're going to go delving deep into values again and how it affects our boundaries and that. So awesome. Thanks, guys. Great. So now let's look at the second one, which is relational. Okay. I think it's, relational. Relational, that's that feeling of loss. Okay. So there's only two here, really, that God meant closeness to each other to be something in which you could be free to be closer or further away as needed. Now, this is the beautiful thing about boundaries, is that when a person is, and this is one of the areas that Anthony and I had a lot of boundary issues on, okay? And that was the fact that because we're now married, it doesn't mean that we have to do everything together. Now, Anthony coming from a very Afrikaans background, and I'm not labeling Afrikaans people, and me coming from a highly English background, we had major differences of opinion on how a relationship should work. I mean, they're on far ends of the field, okay? I mean, the English and the Boers had wars in South Africa over littler things than what we did, okay? And so for us to actually understand, and for me to, and also it has a lot to do with history, okay? And certain things that his ex-wife would do, that if I said, listen, I'm going to go and have tea and coffee with my friends, and it excluded him, that caused major emotional issues in Anthony. And it wasn't because of what I was doing, it was because of history. And so it was very important for us to sit down, discuss, and say, hold on a second, just because I'm going to go do this, it doesn't mean that is it. And if you're going to behave this way, then I'm going to stay out for 2 hours and not 1 hour, you know. And we had to really, it wasn't said like that. It was said a lot more kinder, but basically it was intimated. But
animated.
But can you see the conversation needed to be had? Because if you don't have conversations with people who are boundary violators in a relationship, and trust me, please know, when you start conversations with boundary violators in a relationship, they are not going to want to accept it. Both of us were boundary violators. both of us so both of us overreacted when we first started setting boundaries. He wants to share something. I'm going to check my time.
I promised you guys last week that I will tell you what was the first fight Michelle and I had about boundaries. Here it comes. She said to me in a very nice way, very firmly, I am not your secretary, and I refuse to be your secretary any further. I went, what? We work together. We're in the same office. So one thing's done, you do it. No, I don't.
Huh?
I'm not your secretary. And it was like, I'm not your secretary. Oh my gosh. I'll be honest with you guys. It was the hardest week of my life with my wife. I wanted to strangle her because I was so used to ordering my staff to do what I want that I actually was including my wife in the same category until she realized he is a boundary violator and I need to stand up myself. And when she had done boundaries, she stood up and said, I'm no longer your secretary, period. And she said it with such a firmness and coldness that I could not believe it.
I did it wrong, in other words, okay? Instead of sitting him down, having a cup of coffee and saying, I feel violated when you keep telling me that I'm your secretary or I have to behave like a secretary, I just blurted out. So, but every now and again, I got to remind him I'm still not his secretary. Okay. All right. So the second one is, okay, the boundary victim always puts power into the boundary violator and gives them power they do not deserve. Okay. So, for example, in abusive relationship situation, let's say, for example, the wife is the boundary violator, the husband is the victim, and she always henpicks him and always tells him what to do, and he's not allowed to go out with his friends, and he's not allowed to go and do that, and he's not allowed to. The more he sits there and doesn't actually say, look, I'm terribly sorry, I'm an individual human being. God has created us as two individuals, okay? I am me and you are you. And yes, we have come together in our relationship, but you're still your entity and I'm still my entity. I was knitted and created my way and you your way. And therefore, I'm terribly sorry if you carry on with this abuse and you carry on with speaking to me like this. Every time that you do that, I'm going to leave the room because I'm not going to be the subject of your anger. I'm not going to be the subject of your bossiness. I'm not going to be the subject of your controlling nature. Okay. But please don't just do that on your own without maybe sitting down and processing it with someone to make sure that if you are going to set that conversation, it is set correctly. Okay. Cool. Oopsie. I'm going to share screen again. Okay, so those are the two for boundary relationships. Tread carefully with your relational side. Please, 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 I'm begging you, chat to someone before. If you say, I want to set a boundary in this area, how do I go about it? Because there's going to be consequences for those actions. Okay, so the next one is functional. All right, so functional is the time and management side of things, which means that the most common boundary symptom is the inability for someone to complete a goal or task. In other words, you'll find a lot of people will start a project, give up a project. You'll find they've got half a painting here and half a fixed chair there and half a knitted object here and half a bit of woodwork there or whatever. So they just can't finish tasks and tasks. That's very functional, okay? The inability to find one's niche is because somebody can't draw boundaries around themselves to say what they want. This was a very big one for me, okay? Very big one because I felt at one stage that because my first husband was a massive boundary violator from a physical perspective, he was a bully and all the rest of it. So when I married Anthony, I sort of thought if I behaved a certain way, then I would get what I wanted. But it didn't work out like that because I started this resentment and this frustration within inside me. So I then couldn't find what I needed to do. So I would do everything that I thought Anthony would be happy with. So I started doing counseling because he did counseling. I started doing whatever it is, art because he did art, or whatever, because I thought it would be nice. But I didn't enjoy those things until it came to a place and a time, and God had to radically do things in our household. In other words, God really had to put Anthony down, literally. He got shot. I thank the Lord that he didn't die. But then I had to step up into being me. Because if I didn't, we wouldn't have earned income. And that's where I learned to get my voice. That's where I started realizing I love training. I don't have to be the secretary. I don't have to be the admin clerk at the back. I don't have to be all that. I can step into my own voice. But it was because I couldn't find my niche. And I started having all those feelings of resentment and not wanting, and unhappiness and depressed and all that, because I wasn't fulfilling my niche. Okay. Because I was doing things to please someone else. So that is what they mean by functional. I wasn't functioning for who I was created to be. Okay. And it's important to allow a person to find that sweet spot and that niche in that area. Awesome, Fernando. Thank you for sharing that with me. Maybe you and I need a cup of coffee. Okay. All right. So those are your 3 areas that we need to just spend some time this week. Looking whether it was the C, the R, or the F, how it fits in with you, process it like Anthony was processing it. As we go through the others, like, for example, when we hit values, you'll see how it ties back into the clinical, like Anthony tied up his circle. But if you can do that for yourself, then go for it as well. Okay. So remember, poor boundaries are going to lead to that resentment, anger, and burnout. So this is the reason why we need to understand that ducks can swim currents.
What?
Okay, ducks can swim currents. So I want you to write that down, everybody. Ducks can swim currents. That is what you're going to learn this week. You're going to learn ducks can swim currents, okay? And if you can learn ducks can swim currents, then you're going to be able to remember how to process a boundary. Okay, ducks can swim currents.
Why did you choose ducks?
Can't I choose?
Well, how did you choose ducks, not salmon?
I'm going to show you right now exactly why we chose ducks. Okay. Wilma. Love it, Wilma. Thank you. Okay. So how do we set a boundary? There were these 4 steps. The first one is ducks. Okay. And then can swim currents. Ducks can swim currents, which means the ducks is for D for define. That's why we couldn't go for S for salmon, because that would be sucks can swim currents, okay? So remember, when you're going to set, now instead of trying to remember these 4 things, okay, you now can, if you just remember ducks can swim currents, what's my first step? It's a duck. Duck means define. Define and identify the boundary that you feel you need to set. Okay. Then can, okay, will be for communicate. Right. All right. So can be communicate. So you need to say what you need. So before you communicate, always remember that when I'm going to set a boundary, I need to set a boundary from a place of love, from a place of kindness, from a place of that I need this person to hear me. I cannot set a boundary in anger. I cannot set a boundary in frustration. I need to set the boundary. So if you feel hurt, upset, frustrated with something, some situation, or something even someone does, you need to find what that is and then sit down and say, okay, how do I, with grace, with love, with kindness, can I communicate this to this person? If you can't, please process it with someone until you can actually communicate it nice and clearly. Because if you do it from a space of love, even though the person gets upset with you, they're not going to get angry. Okay. Then swim. Swim was all about stay simple. Don't over explain. Don't go into, in 1948, on the 28th of November, you did this. And then on the 6th of November, 1642, you did this. And then on 1924, you did this. Okay, that's not going to work. All right, just keep it simple. When you do this, I feel frustrated. It's upsetting my emotions. And what I would like to happen is this. If you cannot agree with this, then this is going to happen. That's how you communicate it. Simple. Don't have to explain. Don't have to go into great detail. Okay, this is where you swim. You swim upstream. You don't drown, you swim, because you keep it simple. Okay. And currents is all about setting. The most important thing is the currents, because if you don't understand the most important step, if you don't understand currents, you're going to be swept away, you're going to drown. So therefore, this is where you need to set consequences to the action. It is so important for us to understand that if you set a boundary, you have to know what the consequences are. You need to say why it's important to you, and then you need to keep the consequences. So ducks can swim currents. Okay, so that means you define your boundary, identify what it is by defining it. You then communicate it from a place of grace and love. Keep it simple when communicating, and then set the consequences. That's the most important step. So,
I just had a wow.
okay.
You know
Me
what you did
too.
with that kid sometimes? You ground it for a month,
It's true.
okay, because there is something wrong. But we could not stick to the month, because after the first week we got soft, and I just realized.
After the first hour, he got soft.
I just realized, oh my
hard
gosh,
work.
just looking at this whole thing,
It is.
that consequences must be measurable. There must be reality to it. I mean, because telling them you're grounded for a month and we just could not keep to that, also we were violating our own boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody
Do
else
you know
would
what
like to?
my sort of wow here was?
What's that?
Is the word why comes up again, and it comes up in the most important statement,
Yeah,
that we need to find our why.
100%.
So the
Why
word
you do
why
things.
came up in the most important statement
Absolutely.
of the sequence again.
Absolutely. It's like when you it's the moral reason why. The moral reason why I do this. And it's also if a child comes to you, you don't, and they ask you, why should I do this? You don't say, because I said so. You've got to give them the moral reason why, because that's how a child grows up. It grows by, and that's why we violate, and that's why we become boundary violators, because we don't learn the moral reason why things happen and why they should be done.
Do you mind if I give a Bible verse that, for me, that sums up this whole process?
Sure.
Do not be indebted to anyone but with love.
Yeah.
Because the moment you're indebted to anyone or any situation, I really believe that we are either being boundary victims or boundary violators, but in love, because God is love. That verse just comes to my spirit.
So if you want to unmute, you can unmute, or please type one aha that you got from this session, and then we're going to wrap it up, because that's it for tonight. Ducks can swim water. So
No, currents.
Sorry, swim water. Ducks can swim currents. Guys, the consequences that you see. I'm watering it down already for you. So please, if you could type one thing you got out of it, or unmute yourself and share what you got from this session. Please, we would appreciate it. Who's kicking off?
Say something.
Okay, Fernando
sorry,
first.
Fernando, go.
Yeah, go for it, Fernando.
Again, it's very thought-provoking again. I tried to do the month planner this morning when we got it. And it sort of makes you realize, I can't remember these things. Now it's making you think back several decades back. And yeah, this mocking mind is really thought-provoking, because things that you shut out, you've forgotten about. Now you've got to think about it and remember it again.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, it's weird, but it's a reality, and I'm just trying to face it. But some of those questions, you read them and you should be so simple to answer, but yet I can't answer them.
It's so true, Fernando. It's so true. And it's because what I feel it is that what's happening is that we start going into personal growth, and then it's like we jump, and for those of you who are coming to the leadership training, you'll learn this in the 5 levels of leadership. And that is what happens, is that we forget about step 1, because we hit a landing. And if you had to walk in a building and steps 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4 started disappearing, fear is going to get in. And how do you get back down again? And so we forget about the basics, and life is about keeping things simple and going back to basics and always understanding, because everything is built off the basics.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you know,
Fernanda.
life consists of milestones, and you know, we all get very proud when our baby stands up, starts walking, but you know, he forgot to start crawling. And the very fact that he did not crawl will catch up with him later on, because it's a natural milestone he needs to take. They roll onto their back, they roll onto their tummy, they start crawling backwards, forwards. So there's a, God has got a plan in how we need to grow. And if you try to fast forward and shortcut, you're gonna come short somewhere.
100%.
And then you're gonna find that every action, like poor old Newton, bless his soul, every action has got a reaction and a relative reaction.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Wilma, for sharing. I'll read the others now, but we'll speak to Vinny, who looks like Shalane.
No, no, a little bit less hair.
A lot less hair. But anyway, yes. Yes, Willie.
Michelle, yeah, my a sentence that just I picked up is step into your own voice. And then my functional side was a lot of marks, but what I also realize for people that want to change with any one of these three is to, if you have maybe a big problem, maybe a big relational problem, or a big problem with your weight, then don't look at the big thing. Start with small things in the relationship. Look for small things and do the ducks can swim currents with the little small things. And then if you have that first yes from the other party,
100%.
Then you have a foot in the door, if 100%. You can say it like that, to carry on.
100%. And that's why, again, Vinny, it's so important, and you know this more than all of us on the group here, and possibly George as well, oh my good doc, is that how valuable it is to have a coach if you want to go in the right direction, because the coach or someone who's going to process it with you will advise you not to hit the big one, to say, listen, if we want that, we need to start here. So where can we get our first win? So thank you for sharing that. That's really valuable. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Liz said, our opening. Thank you. Awesome, Liz. Okay, Tanya says, aha, was the moment. Swim. Stay simple when communicating boundaries. Absolutely, especially to our family and to our children, Tanya. So important. Keep it simple, simple, simple. My current situation is all about clinical symptoms. It made me realize where my problems are now. It's a matter of working through them. Absolutely, Sonia. Thank you for that. And also, guys, please drop me one-liners, leave me a voice message. I might not get to it immediately, but I'll certainly am here to help you process it and take you through that the whole journey. You know, help, this is not working for me, whatever it might be. Okay. I won't answer a
just
phone,
but I will phone her before 9 in the morning.
I was just going to say, I will never answer a phone before 9 o'clock in the morning, and I will not answer a phone after 7 o'clock at night. And you'll be lucky if I even answer it during the day, because I'm normally on a Zoom call or I'm in a meeting or something. So just leave voice notes for me on WhatsApp or Telegram. Okay. And then finally, I'm battling with the white texting on the slides. Okay, awesome. Finally, I was thinking of changing it. So thank you for that. Okay, thank you for sharing that with us. I agree. I need to communicate more often and set and agree. Absolutely fine to set those. That's where you're probably going to find it the most difficult is setting the consequences, because you don't like hurting people. You're very kind all the time to people. So for you to set a consequence would be really, really hard, because it's like, I want to set the boundary, but I'll let you off the hook. Okay, because you're a kind guy. Okay.
May I add value here?
Yes.
I'd like to share what we did with our children, guys. When we came to this point on Sundays, we had a round table. We were all around the round table. And in terms of setting the consequences, the most effective methodology we utilized is that we asked the child, in doing A, B, C, or D, what do you believe the consequence should be? Do you know that they always chose consequences more stringent than what we actually had in mind? And in that way, they got involved. They said, okay, that's a bit tough. Give us a more realistic consequence, one that you can keep. Because after we made that error of saying to them, you're grounded for a month, we went back to our boundaries and said, well, we need to change the way we communicate. And we did. And keep it simple. And then we said, right. And they started then communicating their own consequences. And, you know, I just realized, adult or child, it will work. Allow the person opportunity to actually choose their own consequence. And if you believe that is strong enough, accept it. But now you already will have the buy-in because it comes from them. Just
we set all our boundaries with our children like that. So awesome. Awesome. Yes, Sylvia, I thought it was quite a cute acronym as well. Hey, ducks can swim currents. Now you're going to remember that whenever it's like, oh, how do I set a boundary? Well, just think about ducks can swim currents and then process it. So it's define, communicate, stay simple, and set consequences. Okay. And the most important thing of boundaries is setting the consequences, and always start with get the little wins first. All right. So, okay, if that's everybody. Yes, woman.
Yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
Just something funny. Ducks can swim currents. You can at the end of the course, when the consequence of doing the course and applying it, you will get a certificate, a DCSC certificate.
Okay. All right. Thank you for communicating that up front. I love it. Awesome. Okay, if anybody was good, if that's it for everybody, I wanted to say thank you for communicating. Thank you for participating. That's the most important. Anybody want to say something else, or are we going to call this the end of the session? Thank you for sharing, and I hope you've got great value. I will, by the latest tomorrow night, have the recording placed onto the group as well as the PowerPoint, so you can go through it. Please feel free to share this with somebody if you feel they need it, and you're allowed to please invite one friend to join you next week, and that's how we're going to grow this group so that we can learn from people like Doc, like Wilma, like George, Tessa, even Lil's got some amazing input. Vinny said some amazing things as well. I know Sonia shared previously with us as well. So please, guys, we really thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for being with us. So God bless you, and have an awesome, awesome evening. Until we chat again, take care. God bless. Thank you, guys.